everyone. Buenos días a todos, and welcome to the Spanish GCSE and iGCSE video tutorial. So in this particular video tutorial, we are looking at the Spanish GCSE and iGCSE reading exam, and I'm going to take you through some general tips on how to approach the reading exam, how to maximize your mark, and exam technique to implement on the day to help you with that. So, first of all, just to introduce myself briefly, I'm Dhananjay Talwar. I studied French and Italian for my MA at the University of Cambridge, graduating in 2015. And I've been a tutor largely since then. And I am extremely passionate about languages and language learning. I've learned more than 20 languages myself to different levels, and that includes at least 9 to fluency, one of which, of course, is Spanish. Which I picked up outside school before practicing considerably. It's something that I love to do, learning languages, something that I'm very passionate about. And I really enjoy inspiring students to do the same, motivating them, making sure they have the tools to succeed in language learning and methods to learn languages efficiently while having a lot of fun, and ultimately helping them to get to their target grades. I've already done that with over 500 students whom I've helped to achieve or exceed their target grade in GCSE or iGCSE exams for languages as a full-time tutor. I've taught 8 languages up to GCSE or iGCSE levels so far, and some of those, of course, at higher levels as well. So the material for this video, though, is all about the Spanish GCSE and iGCSE reading exam. And before we go into that, this is a quick look at the 4 different exam boards for GCSE Spanish and 2 exam boards for iGCSE Spanish as of August 2025. This video is quite general in nature, so we're looking at the reading exam overall, and so this is relevant for students of any exam board, but it is useful nonetheless to be aware of which exam board you're studying as early as you can be. So, these are the question types, or the most common question types that do come up for different exam boards, actually, across different exam boards in the reading exam. These include gap fill questions, multiple choice style questions, questions where you have to answer true, false, or not mentioned, questions asking you to identify the correct statements, questions asking you for an answer in English, questions asking you to answer in Spanish, and translation. And if you do have translation as part of your reading paper, then that would be inevitably, basically, translation from Spanish into English. I do cover every single one of these question types, apart from translation, all together. So from gap fill questions down to questions where you've got to answer in Spanish. I cover those in a separate video where I take you through each of the reading exam question types for Spanish GCSE and iGCSE one by one, and give you the techniques you need to get all of the marks for these questions. Translation is covered in yet another video, which looks specifically at translation, both from Spanish to English and from English to Spanish. So I really recommend watching both of those videos as well. They should be very useful for students. This time, though, we are looking at the reading exam more generally, and some general tips across the reading exam and what you can implement to be able to maximize your marks when answering reading questions. So the reading exam is, of course, a timed written paper. And while there are differences from exam board to exam board, Pearson and Excel iGCSE still, as of August 2025, has a combined reading and writing paper, for instance. There is a lot of overlap across most of the exam boards too. Questions are often multiple choice, or they require short written answers in English or in Spanish. And that other video that I've done on each of these question types will be very useful too. And questions are all based on text. So for every single question, there will be a separate text to read through carefully first. And of course, as a student, you can read through each text as many times as you want or need. That is a crucial difference between the reading exam and the listening exam. In the listening exam, you'll hear every source twice, 3 times, I suppose, if it's the dictation task specifically. But for the Spanish GCSE or iGCSE reading paper, you are allowed to go back over previous texts to view previous questions again. And the only limit there is the time available to you, because you've got to finish all the questions and make sure you have the time required to check everything that you've written as well. Okay, so here are some of my top tips for the Spanish GCSE and iGCSE reading exam. So, of course, make sure you read through the instructions for every question thoroughly. That can really trip students up. Even some of the top candidates will lose marks just because they have skipped over the instructions or they haven't read through them carefully enough. So make sure that you take in and absorb the instructions and understand exactly what you've got to do for every single question to score the marks. Likewise, familiarize yourself with the technique required for each of the question types. I mention that because the technique is different for different types of questions, and there are common questions that do come up across different exam boards too in the reading exam. The other video that I've made should be extremely useful for this, because I go through each of those question types, the most common ones, in depth and provide the techniques required in a step-by-step form. So I do recommend that video as well. But definitely take a bit of time to familiarize yourself with the technique needed, and then practice and practice. Use past papers and hone that technique so it gets to the point where you can instantly recognize which question type a certain question is and what the technique you need to put into practice then is as well. Learn topic-specific vocabulary, so I wouldn't neglect any topic areas. You can view the topic areas for your exam board on the website of your exam board in the specification too, but do make sure to revise vocabulary for all of the topic areas. Topic-specific vocabulary can come up in reading texts, and certainly knowing that and understanding that vocabulary can make a difference. Exam technique can also certainly make a big difference. That can really differentiate between different candidates and students. Exam technique involves knowing the techniques required for answering all of the questions, but also how to pace yourself in the exam, how to manage your time, how to answer in exam conditions without getting flustered, and so on. So there is a lot of these exams for GCSE and iGCSE languages that comes down to exam technique. Just knowing Spanish well, or whichever language it is that you're studying, is actually not necessarily enough. And exam technique, and that its importance is something I really cannot emphasize enough. So make sure you do familiarize yourself with the necessary exam technique. Okay, here are a few more tips when it comes to the Spanish GCSE or iGCSE reading exam. Time management is really important, so make sure to practice that as well. If you're doing the reading exam, then as a student, you need to be aware of how much time has already gone and how much time is left in the paper. There should, of course, be a clock or some sort of a timer for you to be able to check that information as well, which is very important. So do make sure to keep checking that clock or that timer periodically as well. You don't need to just stare at it. You don't need to constantly check it, of course, because that will distract you from answering the actual questions and scoring the marks. But you should be aware of how much time is left, and you need to be able to pace yourself accordingly as well, so that you have some idea of whether you're going fairly quickly through the exam paper, or if you're actually taking your time and going quite slowly. Because then you need to either speed up or slow down accordingly in order to be able to finish all of the questions on the paper and give yourself enough time to check as well. Don't forget that checking time, which is really important. I'd recommend at least 5 minutes, if not closer to 10, to check through everything. And you can even check through twice. What I would often do is check quickly back over a question that I've just completed, and then check over everything right at the end of the paper once I finish the final question. Make sure that you practice in exam conditions, because that's the best way to practice and prepare for the real thing, is to mimic the exact conditions of the real thing as closely as you possibly can. And use past paper materials as well. Try and tailor these and make sure that they're appropriate for your exam board and your level, because for the Spanish GCSE exam boards, there is a difference between foundation and higher tier. So make sure that you're doing the right past paper materials. Of course, the past papers and the syllabus can change for exam boards over time. So try and make sure the materials you're using are as suitable as possible for your final exams and as useful preparation as possible for your final exams. Okay, now let's move on to exam technique for the reading exam, and I'm going to go through this in a little bit more detail. So, there are some typical parts of exam technique that tend to cause students more difficulty and which students might find it harder to actually implement. And I'm going to go through these one by one. So, they include making sure to read each question and the possible answers fully. So, for the reading paper in particular, you'll be presented with a text for every single question. I would read through that text at least once in full, if not even skim reading it the second time. I suppose how many times you read the text can also depend on how much time you still have in the exam, but I would read it at least once in full to get a full overview of the text. And then I would read through every single question and the possible answers in full, one by one as well. Make sure that you make note of how many marks are available per question. That's a really useful guide as to how to answer it. And make sure you understand all of the options that you have to choose from too, because then you'll go back to the text and try and identify which one of those is correct. So do read through the instructions and every question thoroughly. Likewise, be careful to check through your work after completing the question. I'd check through just after I finished a question. I'd glance back and make sure that I've done everything I need to do. I haven't left out any information that I was required to provide. I haven't made any obvious silly mistakes, for instance. And then once I finished the final question in the reading paper, I would very much look back and check through everything that I've written. And of course, if you've given any answers in Spanish at all, which is possible in the reading paper, then you have to check for things like spelling, grammar, and punctuation as well as the sense or the meaning of what you have written. You can also put a symbol next to difficult questions that you found particularly challenging, and come back to those first when checking. That symbol, like an asterisk or a star often, but it could be whatever symbol appeals to you, is just a sign to yourself, basically, that these are the questions to look back at, to look back on and to check through first once your checking time starts. So once that's 5-10 minutes of checking time starts, you go back to these questions with a star or asterisk next to them first, because you know that there's potentially more marks to gain for those questions as you found them particularly challenging. So you read through the text again, make sure that you understood everything, and attempt to answer those questions as well as you possibly can. Make sure you're aware of how much time has gone in the exam and how much time has left. As mentioned, you need to check that clock periodically. Don't forget about it, because managing your time is a really important skill for exams. And check how many marks are available for every single question too, because it can vary. The instructions should also tell you how many answers you need to give or select as well. The number of marks available per question is also a very useful guide as to how many pieces of information you need to give for that question. So don't overlook that. You always answer in the same language that the question itself is written in. That is the rule to follow if there's any doubt whatsoever. However, there shouldn't really be any doubt, because the question paper should state very clearly which language you have to use when answering the question. And for many of these questions, of course, there will be multiple choice, or they will simply require you to tick a box or to put a letter down in the correct place on the exam paper, rather than requiring written answers from the student. And the last point is also very important, and something that not every student certainly does, and that is not leaving a question blank. So do not leave a question out. To me, this is really, really bad, really criminal when students do this, but especially for multiple choice questions. For multiple choice style questions, it's even worse to leave a question out, because even if you have a random guess, you've got still a reasonably good chance usually of getting the question correct, or some decent chance of answering correctly. But even for questions which might require you to write out longer answers, I would not leave the question blank. I would always try and have a go as long as you've got the time to be able to do so as well. Try and do so you can grab as many marks as possible. Okay, and here is a brief list of common mistakes made by students in the reading exam. So these are things to be careful of and watch out for. So these include writing down the first answer option that you come across. As we've said, it's really common for examiners to try and trick students in the reading and even in the listening papers. So do not write down the first answer which appears to be correct. What often happens is that in the text or in the source, they will mention every single possible answer option. And many students will simply tick the first one that they hear or that they come across. Which is very dangerous and very tricky because that could be contradicted later on in the text or in the audio if it's listening. So make sure to pay some attention to the details and listen out carefully because you may also come across things like synonyms or false friends. So you may not hear the exact vocabulary that is mentioned in that answer option. And if you do not hear the exact word or see the exact word as it is written in the options for the answers, that does not mean that it's not necessarily correct because they could have used another synonym or paraphrased it instead. False friends are also very common, so try not to fall prey to those. False friends are basically words that look very similar or words that look, seem very similar to an English word, but have a completely different meaning in Spanish. For example, libreria in Spanish looks like the English word library, but actually refers to a bookshop instead of a library. And there are many other examples of false friends too. So trick questions are commonplace. Don't fall for those. And that's likely to take some practice as well. Misunderstanding negatives, likewise, because a negative changes the entire meaning of a statement or sentence. If you say, Paula does not like books, that is the complete opposite of saying Paula does like books. So make sure you pay attention to each of the statements in the answer options and you read through those carefully. Not answering the question's exact requirements can be common as well, particularly when you've got to answer in English or in Spanish. Again, make sure that you read the exact instructions and that you do not, you make sure that your answer is addressing what exactly the question is asking for. Okay, another common area of difficulty for many students is coming across unfamiliar words. So for the new syllabus for exam boards like AQA and Pearson Edexcel GCSE, there is a fixed vocabulary list now, which students of those exam boards will probably be very glad about, which means that you have a certain number of words that you simply have to memorize for, I think, 1,200, I believe, for foundation tier, and 1,700 for higher tier, I believe. But there is some discrepancy between foundation and higher tier for those exam boards. And if you know those words, if you're familiar with those words on the fixed vocab lists, then you're unlikely to come across too many words outside of that in the reading paper. But for other exam boards that are not AQA or Pearson Edexcel GCSE, that's not the case. There are no fixed vocab lists. And you could well come across unfamiliar words that you've never seen before in your Spanish GCSE or iGCSE reading paper. And if you do, then try not to panic and try and put into practice some of these strategies instead. So firstly, you could see if there are words hidden inside the unknown word that you do know. For example, if you don't know what the word friolento means, it's unlikely that students would know at GCSE level, you might well be able to recognize that this contains the Spanish word frío, meaning cold, which is much, much more common. And therefore, you could create a link between frío and friolento. You're likely to be able to work out that friolento has a very similar meaning to frío. You could also see if the word is similar to any other Spanish words you do know. For example, the verb calentar, meaning to heat up, looks pretty similar to another Spanish word, caliente, meaning hot. So if you're not sure what calentar is and you come across it in a text, you could try and guess its meaning by working out that it's similar to the word caliente, meaning hot. That can really help you to work out the meanings of unknown words as well. And you can see if the word is similar to any other words in a different language as well, whether in English or another language. French, Italian, Portuguese, and so on are all Latin languages, and therefore there's a lot of vocabulary in common with Spanish too. But this can work with English words as well. For instance, globalización, even if you've never seen that Spanish word, you're likely to be able to work out that it means globalization simply because it looks really similar to the English equivalent. So that can be an extremely useful strategy too. Okay, and now here is time for a quick quiz to test your understanding of the Spanish GCSE and iGCSE reading exam. So, question number 1. What is the first thing to do or to read through when starting a new question in the reading exam? This applies to all questions in the reading paper, regardless of what question type exactly it is. And I'll give you a few seconds to think through this one before I show the answer. Okay, and here comes the answer. The first thing to do is certainly to read through all of the instructions, make sure that you've understood them fully. I would also then read through each text in full at least once as well, and read through the questions themselves, noting the number of marks available, as well as the answer options. Question number 2 then is true or false. You should always answer questions in the reading exam in the same language that the question itself is written in. Is that true or false? It is something that I mentioned. So try to cast your minds back to that. And I will give you a few seconds again before I reveal this answer. Okay, and I'll show you the answer to this now. This one is certainly true. So the question paper will definitely also make it clear what language you should answer the question in. But if you're in any doubt whatsoever, you can just follow this rule. You always answer questions in the reading paper or listening paper in the same language that the question is written in. Okay, question number 3 then. True or false? If you do not understand a Spanish word that you come across in a text, you should just completely ignore it and move on. Is this one true or is it false? Let me give you a few seconds to rack your brains. Okay, and I'm going to show this answer now as well. So this is false. If that particular word seems like it could be important to one of the answers in any way, then there are various techniques available to try and work this out, which I covered towards the end of the video too. So do look back over those if needed. These are likely to take some practice. The context also can really significantly make a difference if you're trying to understand an unknown word. It can make it a lot clearer what an unknown word can mean. Try not to, if you don't think the word is extremely important, then try not to spend too long on it, or try not to get too worked up about just one word in the text, because it certainly can happen that you come across words that are unknown or even quite difficult for GCSE or iGCSE, depending on your exam board as well. And lastly, question 4. Why is it important to check the number of marks available for each question on the reading exam? What does that contribute? How does that help you exactly? Let me give you a few seconds again to think through this. Okay, and I will show the answer to this last question now too. So this is because this usually acts as a guide as to how much information you have to provide or how many details you're required to give. So do make sure to check the number of marks available per question for every question on the reading exam before you answer it fully. Yeah, that is a useful guide as to how many details you need to provide. Okay, if you've got questions about anything that came up in this video, or if you'd like more information about personalized help, which I do also provide, you can contact me by email, through Facebook or Instagram. And I do post on Facebook, Instagram, even on LinkedIn each day, offering help in learning languages and sharing my passion and love for languages with people. Yeah, I have to do so. I'm just so passionate about them. But I offer a lot of advice on techniques to learn languages, ways to do so effectively, and having a lot of fun as well. And I do post a lot about GCSE and iGCSE languages too. So how you can revise for these exams, practice exam technique, and more. So well worth giving me a follow on each of those platforms. I have many resources, including free ones, available too. That's for all languages, really, for GCSE and iGCSE, and of course includes Spanish. So don't hesitate to reach out if you want to access those. And I do one-to-one classes, group classes, courses, and more. So for information on any of that, just reach out.